Hi, this is Derek doing a review for HorrorNerds.com on the movie Scream 3, the supposedly at that time final installment of the Scream series. It was done in 2000. It was directed by Wes Craven, written this time not by Kevin Williamson, but by Aaron Kruger. Forgive me if I botched that name. Anyways, it stars, of course, Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott. You have Courtney Cox, you have Dewey, and a whole host of new people as the movie series at this point had grown to such considerable fame. Every single person wanted in on this apparently, and the lucky stars that were able to be part of the final installment of the Scream series up to this point were definitely none the wiser, considering many of them all got killed horribly. But the problem with this film, and yes, I'm going to come right out and say there's a problem, is that as a trilogy, you know, most of the time when you get to the third movie, unless it's, you know, I guess one of the great classics, which, you know, it's easy to say that in retrospect, it just feels thin, you know, and this trilogy part is no exception. It was my least favorite out of all the Scream movies. The premise was so completely I just worn, you know. I did appreciate the satire, but the self-referencing wasn't there as much as I had hoped. The idea of having Stab 3, you know, considering the movie is set about 3 years after what happened in Scream 2, you know, that was kind of cool, and I like the idea of the Hollywoodizing of what happened to Sydney in her life. That seems very much close to what reality would do. As you know, anything and everything that happens in our world, there's probably a movie director out there that wants to make a movie about it, just, you know, for no reason, because it's a good paycheck. And it sort of felt like the actors in this movie were kind of just earning their paychecks. I mean, the characters were very thin. I mean, we didn't really even have enough time or interest in them to appreciate their deaths. Not to mention, you know, there's just so many famous people in this. The star power really pushes back, you know, the role of Sidney Prescott in this film. I, you know, read on Wikipedia, they had mentioned that, you know, Neve Campbell was too much into other things at this point, so they had to tone her role down. Anytime that kind of thing happens, you can tell that that means one of two things. Either the writer wasn't thinking correctly, because there's no way in hell I would, you know, allow my main character to even say something like that to me, or, you know, the main character, this being Neve Campbell, just didn't care at this point. And it sort of shows, you know. I would even say on the fourth Scream it showed, although no offense to Miss Campbell, I like everything she's done. It's just that you can almost see the wear in the eyes, you know. It was like, really, another Ghostface killing. And even in this movie, she's in self, you know, imposed isolation, you know, acting as a counselor, which seems very true to her character. But at the same time, you know, coming to Hollywood and getting involved with all that, I mean, why would you when you barely escaped the last two times, you know? And yes, I understand Ghostface is out to kill you, but I mean, Jesus, you know, hop on a plane and go somewhere he can't find you, you know. I don't know, maybe I'm just reaching there. The main problem I have with this film, though, has nothing to do with her. There's two problems, actually. One is that, you know, the cameos in this film were just a little too much. I mean, Carrie Fisher and Jay and Silent Bob, I mean, anytime you mix those three names even in the same sentence, it just doesn't make sense to me. It never really quite did, you know. Even watching Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and see Mark Hamill in there was sort of, I don't know, when I saw it at the time I thought it was cool, but, you know, in retrospect, it sort of nixes and devalues what I've always loved and felt about Star Wars. And granted, Carrie Fisher, you know, getting these insanely awkward roles in all these movies and TV shows, I'll never understand her logic to that, but, you know, in this particular case, it almost felt pointless. Like, what are you even doing in this movie? That was a big one, but, you know, I understand why, in some level, you know, people want to get attached to famous movies, things like that, helps their career, whatever. But the biggest problem, really, honestly, the issue that just destroys this film for me is that you have, you know, the director who turns out to be the killer and then saying he's Sidney's half-brother and was rejected by Maureen Prescott. and that, you know, he got Stu and Billy from the first one to try to kill her. I mean, the whole point of the first one that made it really interesting was that Stu and Billy just want to be famous. There was no motivation for the killing. And I think that's kind of scary when people just kill to kill. When I could be in a shopping mall and somebody could just randomly stab me in the back of my head, you know, and when they ask them why, I don't know, just because I wanted to. That's scary. You know, but now you're giving them motive that they didn't even begin to talk about. I mean, if you know, you can just tell it was just something written. You know, I don't think it was written at the beginning when the movie Scream was made. And I never liked that. I thought that was a huge reach and not necessary. So, you know, if you can look aside from that, you know, watch this film just to complete your viewing of the entire Scream catalog. I get that, but other than that, as a standalone film, it's terrible. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you are watching the Scream series just to watch them, well then, of course, you have to see it to see how it ends. Many people called it the perfect ending. I horribly disagree with that. I could have written a better film, and I'm by no means not even near as talented as the Pinky of Kevin Williamson, but you know, Aaron Kruger apparently can't write a horror movie because didn't do a very good job with this. So, anyways, that's my review of Scream 3 for HorrorNerds.com. This is Derek. I'll be talking to you. Thanks.